Hi, here I wanted to discuss the important question whether news, politics, and even history are largely scripted and planned. Just to give some examples, there's Albert Pike's letter to the Italian politician Giuseppe Mazzini from 1871, indicating collusion to produce three world wars. David Pike was a Freemason and lived in the 19th century in the US, I think. There's Event 201, which discussed the response to a pandemic right before it started. And there are sayers like Nostradamus or in Germany, Illmeyer. These are likely not actual prophecies they produce. They're designed presumably to create acceptance for certain events so people consider them as unavoidable, produced by higher powers. In the field of psychological operations, PSYOPs, this is also called predictive programming or psychological conditioning or subliminal messaging, which lessens the resistance and commotion. Further evidence comes from Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum and his book COVID-19, The Great Reset from 2020. If you consider that writing a book normally takes years, let's say a couple of years, it is nearly impossible to produce it in 2020, the year of the pandemic. Of course, there's lots of other circumstantial evidence, movies like Civil War, which comes out in 2024. If you consider that it takes years to produce a film, to film it, to edit it, the beginnings of that movie would have potentially started around 2020. So there are numerous examples like that. To gain some insight, I wanted to analyze the nonverbal behavior, as nonverbal behavior is much harder to fake or impossible to control even, in contrast to the spoken word. In particular, something to watch out for is incongruency between the spoken words and the behavior, which is often used in lie detection. Of course, a baseline for reference is generally needed, which is not always provided in these short video clips, or generally not. But keeping this in mind, I'm a very intuitive person and use my skills to read between the lines to extract useful information to guide me. Okay, so here we go. So I wanted to briefly talk about the risk report recently presented at the World Economic Forum in Davos a couple of weeks ago. Also mentioned news reporters, a NATO admiral, and a politician. Okay, let's get started. Okay, first the Global Risk Report 2024. So here we see a panel consisting of the head of media of the World Economic Forum, that's the managing director of the World Economic Forum, and then representatives of insurance companies. So here Marsh McLennan and Zurich Insurance Group.
Putting that on top of already some years of economic hardship, the fact that the pandemic actually redraws so many of our institutional, the way we think about things, healthcare, workforce planning, everything is changing, and now there's another wave of changes coming on top of that. Economic hardship, and you have societal polarization really being exacerbated by that, which will create polarization, and it will create a dynamic that is not necessarily prone for peace and collaboration. It is a very dangerous mix.
So we see her laughing when she talks about peace and collaboration. So that stands out. Yeah, it's not appropriate at this moment to laugh about it. And we see the general talking points about a changing world and polarization and misinformation. She's just pushing these usual points of this new abnormal, basically.
How do we address this? Because both with cyber, with AI, misinformation, disinformation, climate change, extreme weather events, all the environmental risks, not one stakeholder group can solve for this alone. The only way that we are going to be able to address this is by coming together and collaborating. And I think that cannot come as news. I think that realization has sunk in by now.
So the usual lists of calamities. And of course, they're stressing that there are no alternatives. It shows that they're promoting the same narratives. Yeah, it's weird. She looks like a flight attendant somehow, and she looks in the camera, which is unusual because it was actually a question from the audience. And you would imagine in a more natural environment that she would actually talk to the audience. But no, she looks in the camera. It feels very staged. I don't know, it stands out and it engraves her messaging into our memories by looking at this ridiculous setup. So it's very memorizable somehow. Yeah, we see her pressing the lips together. It could be an indicator that she's suppressing additional laughter or she's holding back information. It doesn't feel like an honest discussion. It feels like there's information withheld at the minimum or it's staged. It doesn't feel natural.
And leverage AI to produce content that will sway public opinion and interfere with election results. You know, there are, again, I do want us to focus on the opportunities with AI, because it is really amazing when you start looking at it, the progress that we can make and how we can...
So a completely inappropriate, unnatural laughter when she stresses AI is amazing. So of course AI is based on plagiarism. It is based on illegal acquisition of data. It doesn't work any other way. Yeah, it's huge neural networks with 10,000s of parameters which have to be trained, and you need lots of data which people didn't agree to give in the first place. So we see again this pushing towards AI as something amazing. Of course, at the same time, fear-mongering and this ridiculous laughter. I don't know what's going on, if she's on drugs, or it doesn't feel real somehow. I don't feel any connection that this is actually a human being we are seeing in front of us. So I can't tell you whether these are real people, whether this event actually took place at the World Economic Forum, or all just a show or AI. What's clear is that it doesn't look natural. Normal people wouldn't act like that. The chance is very high that this is deliberate, how it's done, with the laughter, and that it's part of a campaign against the people. Okay, so here we see a short clip of the morning show of a German news channel.
Wir müssen, die Kollegen haben gerade gesagt, ich weiß nicht, wie Rugby funktioniert. Ich habe gerade mal die Regeln gegoogelt. Wir müssen uns mehr damit beschäftigen, habe ich gerade festgestellt. Ja? Man darf nur den Ball...
A totally ridiculous show, bringing the German news down to the American level.
Du hast aber jetzt Zeit, ungefähr 3 Minuten 40, weil in der Zeit Susanne Daubner nämlich die Nachrichten des Morgens
Sehr gerne.
verkündet.
Nee, da muss ich drauf konzentrieren. Guten Morgen, Susanne.
Einen schönen guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. Entschuldigung. Bundeskanzler Scholz trifft sich... Oh Gott. Es tut mir jetzt echt leid. Das ist jetzt nichts. Oh Mann.
So that little clip makes you really question reality. It feels like a glitch in the Matrix. It feels almost like we are made fun of. And it's extremely unlikely that this would happen naturally.
So, aber jetzt. Bundeskanzler Scholz trifft sich heute im Kanzleramt mit Vertretern der deutschen Chemieindustrie, um über die Zukunft der Branche zu beraten.
Oh my God. So it is so telling, because it's about the Chancellor of Germany, that puppet, Olaf Scholz, discussing the future of the chemical industry in Germany. So chemical industry is something which is heavily relying on energy, which is, of course, as we know, cut off. Super expensive now. It's about the destruction of German industry. Yeah, it feels rubbed in our faces. We are made fun of. It's surreal. So it feels extremely unlikely that an episode like that would happen by chance. For live TV, there are certain safety procedures in place to avoid something like that. There could be a cut or break, or the showing of some pre-recorded segment. There could be a co-presenter intervening. There could be instructions either from the teleprompter or from the director through the earpiece. Often there are also actual live delays to have this little extra control over segments working out at the right time. There could be an interruption due to a technical glitch. There are many ways how to deal with something like that. You wouldn't have someone like her, an experienced news reporter apparently, Susanne Daubner, to have this fit on live TV. It's nearly impossible. And the audience slowly gets a sense that something is not right. And this, I think, is on purpose. It's part of the psychological warfare. Next, there's a short clip from Face the Nation, from CBC News, talking about predictions for 2024.
What's your big prediction for the year ahead?
Let me rub this thing.
Your informed prediction.
All right, my informed prediction?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's a little easier, I think. Crime is going down across the country. You wouldn't think that based on what you hear, and final numbers come out early next year.
So that part is not the part I wanted to show, but it shows the stark contrast which is set up. So he mumbles around, doesn't really know what to talk about, is very weak in his predictions, talks about that the crime went down when, everyone knows it went up. And this is setting up the stage for the next piece.
Officers across the country are understaffed, have managed to essentially get their arms around this problem.
So we see already here in stark contrast is the next one in line, Catherine Herridge. And she stands out, yeah? She's between these two guys in their dark blue suits. And she looks very dark. She has this dark aura around her. And this is exaggerated by her dark makeup. So the contrast is set up here to be extreme.
Catherine?
Well, mine's a little dark. I just feel a lot of concern that 2024 may be the year.
So she looks more like coming out of a horror cabinet. So normally she doesn't look like that. I looked around at some other video clips. She doesn't have this super dark makeup. And then the wrinkles, the worry lines on the forehead. So this is in stark contrast to the very shallow discussion we had before.
2024 may be the year of a black swan event. This is a national security event.
Okay, so here she predicts a black swan event, which is an extremely negative event, which by definition is hard or impossible to predict. And so that is already illogical to make this prediction. And that's why it's so confusing. It makes it so memorable and stick because of this contradiction.
With high impact, that's very hard to predict. There are a number of concerns that I have that...
Very negative shake, and she makes this one-eyed symbol, the satanic symbol. It stresses even more her concerns. It makes it more memorable.
Factor into that, not only this sort of enduring heightened threat level that we're facing, the wars in Israel, also Ukraine, and we're so divided in this country in ways that we haven't seen before. And
Oh, wow. Who contributed to this division? Can't think of anyone.
I think that just creates fertile ground for our adversaries like North Korea, China, and Iran. And that's what...
Yeah, blame it on some external enemy far away.
Concerns me most.
And, you know, she wasn't smiling at all. That's American news, you have to remember. So normally everyone is smiling, everyone is relaxed, everyone is cool. She doesn't smile at all. That really stresses us because it's so unusual. And why would you wear dark makeup to match your little statement you have to make? Yeah, and it just makes it very memorable, and so it feels unlikely that this happened by chance. Okay, so next we see a Swedish Admiral introducing the NATO Steadfast Defender 2024, the largest NATO exercise in decades. It started on February the 1st and goes to end of May. I think it's in 2 parts. Essentially practicing war with Russia. And that's, of course, surreal by itself, but let's look at this guy here and see what kind of impressions we get, what kind of feelings come up.
With regard to the battle groups that we set up, if you look back to the training, the fact that we now have Steadfast Defender with 90,000 troops, that is a record number. That is a record number of troops that we can bring to bear and have an exercise with in that size. Across the alliance, across the ocean, from the US to Europe, in Europe. That is a big change. People find it a surprise and as a result buy a radio on batteries. That is great. It is part of the package that the Swedish government is...
So he has this very short, dismissive laugh when it's about buying a radio. It's inappropriate, yeah? It feels again a bit like he's making fun of the people for buying a battery and being worried about it. Of course, the worry is created by their huge exercise, practicing war, World War III. It is worrisome, and he's contributing to it.
Is talking about you need to have water, you need to have a radio on batteries, and you need to have a flashlight on batteries to make sure that you can survive the first 36 hours. Things like that.
Surviving the first 36 hours, having a radio and a flashlight and so on in some water. This is not very comforting. And I suspect the design behind it is to create the fear.
That's simple things, but it starts there. The realization that not everything is plannable, not everything is going to be honky-dory in the next 20 years. I'm not saying it is going wrong tomorrow, but we have to realize...
Not wrong tomorrow, but, you know, in a week.
It's not a given that we are in peace. And that's why we have the plans.
Very strange.
Things. But it starts there. the realization.
So he always looks to his left as well. He has this very fearful look when he looks to the left.
That not everything is plannable, not everything is going to be honky-dory in the
Again, we see it here as well.
next 20 years. I'm not saying it is
Here again.
going wrong tomorrow, but we have to realize it's not a given that we are in peace.
So he has this very strange, fearful expression on his face with the eyes wide open, and he looks fearfully to his left. That creates worry. So there's no confidence that there will be peace when we look at him. We expect him to know more than we know, and if he looks worried, then we should be worried. And this is the message behind it. From the main opposition party in Germany, AfD. It's all in German. I couldn't get the subtitles translated to English, so we keep it short. So she's describing the lawlessness in Germany because of the open border politics, the rising crime rate.
Auch in Ghana als Mörder gesucht wurde. Das ist völlig irre, was sich in diesem Land abspielt. Ja, wir sind zu einem Importeur von Gewalt und Terror geworden und werden die Leute nicht mehr los. Ja, sie kommen ohne Passpapiere rein, aber ohne Passpapiere kriegen wir sie nicht mehr raus. Also es ist völliger Blödsinn und völliger Wahnsinn, was sich hier abspielt.
It's interesting, we see her always go on her tiptoes, up and down. So she's very dynamic, full of energy, a bit restless. Here it's a strange little episode because she's looking up and down and licking her lips. That's a very flirty type behavior or self-pleasing behavior. It's not clear why she would check him out. She's declared lesbian.
Wie ist diese Politik eigentlich in Ihren Augen möglich? Das kann ja nun nicht so sein, dass das keiner sieht. Das muss ja dann auch noch irgendwelche anderen Interessen wissen.
So now he's asking why it happens, how it happens. So whether there are other interests being followed by the parties in government.
Mit rein.
Darüber kann man nur spekulieren und das kann ich nicht. Ja?
It's interesting. So she quickly dismisses the question that she wants to stay with the facts. She doesn't want to speculate. It's somewhat understandable that you want to talk about your area of expertise and not deviate and speculate too much. But nevertheless, that's a good question because at that time there was actually the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos and part of the government was there. Robert Habeck, the Vice Chancellor and Minister of Economics from the Green Party, and Christian Lindner, the Minister of Finance from the Liberal Party. And at that meeting, there were statements by Klaus Schwab about that elections won't be needed because AI will know and predict what people want. These are completely undemocratic and worrisome statements. So why wouldn't you be able to make a statement about it? You don't have to speculate too much. It's right in people's faces. So that makes me suspicious somehow. What speaks for her is that she doesn't have any duping delight, so she doesn't have to have a hidden agenda and she hopes to get away with it. There are no asymmetric shoulder shrugs as far as I can tell, which would show being unsure about things. So she's not avoiding his gaze by looking away, so that would be kind of extreme, asymmetric shoulder shrugs, looking away to the side. She's not doing it, but she closes her eyes for a moment, but she did this before as well. So it could be something to block out for the purpose, but often people also do it to stress the end of a statement. Yeah, it's a bit like an illustrator. And, I suspect that's what she's doing here.
Das werde ich auch nicht machen. Fakt ist einfach, dass es
And she very quickly comes back to the facts.
Eine Politik der Rechtlosigkeit, die hier betrieben wird. Und in einem...
So she talks again about lawlessness, and she has this expression of disgust even, but she does this quite a bit. So that might also be part of her baseline expression.
Die hier betrieben wird.
That's disgust and contempt when she talks about the current politics. So that's congruent with what she's saying and makes it more trustworthy. So there's no evidence in this little video clips that she's just fooling the guy and playing him. But I do think she's controlled opposition. To what extent she's tolerated for a certain purpose or guided, I can't tell you. What makes me suspicious is that her responses are very one-sided. And this controlled opposition, a key feature, I think, is always when you have this predetermined narrative you keep repeating again and again. There's no evidence of adjustment or learning something new. So generally, no one knows everything at the start, and with time, new information comes out, and there should be some learning process and also development of ideas. I can see this also in myself and people I talked to over the last 4 years. Of course, we are completely in the dark and our learning curve was very steep, but it's clear that people like us make adjustments to their worldviews based on information coming out. And we basically never see that with these type of people. It's always the same record playing. To me, that's a typical indicator for controlled opposition. So in summary, we saw numerous cases of unusual behavior on TV, including ridiculing audiences in a subtle way, fear-mongering, irrational laughter at inappropriate moments, irrational confusing behavior in statements. So such behaviors could be used in psychological warfare. Interestingly, it's always relatively subtle or sparse, not to overdo it, keeping the audience guessing. So the use of fear, which could be an indicator that an AI is actually controlling the narrative. I don't know, it's pure speculation. But the use of fear and confusion keeps people focused on external events, distracted to look at important things right in front of them. It shuts down logical thinking of the frontal lobe. And persistent fear interferes with engram cells and index neurons of the hippocampus of the temporal lobe to disrupt memory formation or retention. You could say the constant bombardment of negative news has a hypnotizing effect. It creates passive behavior, absence of drive to take actions or responsibility or make changes. The question who knows how much of the overarching agenda is hard to answer, when I find it puzzling. That might indicate that some of these clips are actually created by AI and fed into social media outlets and have little to do with actual people's behavior. So that would make it impossible to read. It would enhance the confusion of people because you can't follow it. It feels very unnatural, and that could be part of driving the agenda forward. In any case, this will likely be an interesting year, maybe historical even. So in conclusion, I hope you found this analysis useful. I'm looking forward to your comments under the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.